Let's see. Anyway, next question. Jesus Christ, we're an hour and a half into this. I'm definitely going to have to break this up. What is the single greatest mistake you've ever made in your life? Oh, God. Greatest mistake that I've made. I'm trying to think here, you know, working at McDonald's doesn't exactly strike me as a major accomplishment, but then again, it did keep food on the table and the bills paid for a good 4 years. Biggest mistake, Jesus. Trying to think here. Agreeing to play Boshi for every 100 subs definitely doesn't strike me as the most intelligent decision. Just having to go through my entire life and trying to find something that was a huge fucking mistake. Biggest mistake in my entire life. Starting to zone out here. I don't know. You know, what mistakes I can come up with don't really seem all that big. Oh! Okay. Now I remember. Biggest mistake I ever made in my life. Okay. Back when I was living in my parents' basement, I had my own TV, VCR, video games, and all that kind of shit, right? One day, the remote for my TV started rattling on me. Like, there was a little tiny loose piece of plastic inside, so every time the remote control moved, I could hear that little piece of plastic rattling inside. And, you know, things like that over time do tend to get to me. So I decided I needed to crack this sucker open and get that damn piece of plastic out there to stop it from rattling. And, you know the way they build remote controls, they have like that seam around the outer edge. So I was trying to get into that to basically pry it open, and you know, I would have preferred to have used a screwdriver, but I couldn't find one, so instead I wound up using a fucking jackknife to try and pry this thing over. And let me describe for you how I had this set up. I was basically, this was so fucking stupid, and I even knew it at the time, I was basically holding the remote between my thighs, and I got my hand wrapped around it almost like a friggin' highly clenched masturbation pose here. So I got the remote between my thighs. I got my left hand wrapped around the remote to hold it in place, and I'm using my right hand to try and press this jackknife down to, you know, jiggling it to try and get it to pry open this seam at the bottom of the remote control. And I knew it was gonna fucking happen before it happened, and I fucking did it anyway. And that was probably the one reason I didn't wind up stabbing myself in the leg. It slipped. The fucking knife slipped off the remote, slid across my middle and index finger between the two bottom knuckles, like right where you would punch someone. So that knife slid across my fingers, and like I said, I knew this dumb shit was going to happen before it did, and because of that, I was able to react fast enough and let go of the knife before I stabbed myself right in the fucking leg. So I didn't stab myself in my left thigh because of that. So yeah, I basically made, I still to this day have this fucking slice mark going across my two fingers, and I can even tell how tilted my fingers were by lining up these two cuts on my fingers. So I basically cut my fingers open, not to the bone, you know, it wasn't that bad, But, you know, I dropped the knife, dropped the remote. I gotta go all the way fucking upstairs to get a fucking Band-Aid for this shit. And, meanwhile, my mom was vacuuming upstairs, so I'm yelling at her to try and help me, and she can't hear a fucking word I'm saying. I go into the bathroom to try and find a Band-Aid, and then I take my hands off my sliced fingers and look at them, and this was a problem with me in my high school years, was seeing my own blood or cutting myself and passing out. So I was in the bathroom trying to find a fucking Band-Aid, which I could not find. I put my fingers under the water tap to basically wash the blood off and clean it off so I can put a Band-Aid on there. And of course, I look at this cleaned out gash across my 2 fingers, and the next thing I know, my mom is trying to wake me up from the bathroom floor, and I got a fucking rug burn on my forehead. Because apparently not only did I pass out, I was having a seizure, because she said that I was basically shaking on the ground, shaking on the floor, rubbing my head into the fucking carpet, which is why I had a fucking rug burn on my forehead for a friggin' week and a half afterwards. So yeah, that right there was the dumbest mistake I've ever made in my life. Trying to pry open a fucking television remote control with a goddamn knife. I mean, even if I had been using a screwdriver, it probably wouldn't have been too much better, but still, that was pretty fucking stupid. God, I can't believe it took me so long to remember that. Jesus. What is your biggest pet peeve and why? I don't think I can tell that without giving away my real name, which I said I wouldn't do. It was a name that stuck with me through most of elementary school, but now at this stage in my life, I'm over it. You know, people can call me that without me immediately losing my fucking temper. But yeah, that was my biggest pet peeve, was being called a particular name, which really got under my skin when I was a kid. As for my current pet peeve, oh god! Current pet peeve is walking through my house and stepping on shit. I don't care whether it's wood pellets from the cat's litter box, kibble from the cat's cat food, or fucking toys that the kids leave all over the place. And the worst part is, when I'm up late, everyone else is asleep, I'm trying to be quiet so as not to wake anyone else up, and there's shit on the floor that I stub my toe on, or step on, or whatever, that banging into my fucking feet, making this huge clattering noise that I'm lucky doesn't wake anyone up. But fuck, I'm just so pissed off at the ridiculous frequency at which shit keeps hitting my feet. I mean, I want my fucking toes bronzed, it's so fucking bad. Not just in stubbing your toe on a fucking chair. Jesus. It's so ridiculously common, and it pisses me off to no fucking end. Do you have any phobias? Yes, losing my fingers or hands in part or whole to a circular saw. That has been a big phobia of mine throughout my entire life, and yet it didn't stop me from being in woodshop class until the 11th grade. I actually like working with wood, but that fear of losing my fingers was always there. In fact, there was one time in the woodshop class, like in the very back of the woodshop class, they had like this big table saw set up in front of this huge garage door, and adjacent to the table saw, was a lathe. And one day in shop class, I'm telling a story that's completely irrelevant to the question, but anyway, I was pushing a piece of wood on the lathe, and one of the other idiot students in my class was at the table saw, and then all of a sudden I hear it, and a couple little droplets of blood splatter on my hand and my board. Now, of course, with the lathe, you got your hand on the front of the board, and like a guard that you, like this little piece of wood guard thing that you basically hold in your hand to push the back of the wood for you so as not to splice up your fucking wrist. So I was pushing this across, and I hear this big noise, this and blood splattering. So I basically stopped pushing for a second, even though I knew it was going to fuck up my cutting of the wood. And I look over, And I see this fucking idiot swing his fucking arm around like he's throwing a goddamn frisbee or some shit, spins around and then runs down to the teacher's office. And then seconds later, he pushes the teacher pushes the big red button that basically shuts off all the power in the entire classroom. So I didn't get to finish my lathe. He takes off with the kid, goes to the hospital, and then the teacher from the metal workshop has to come in and keep an eye on. Has to basically stop his class, come in, keep an eye on us until that teacher gets back from the hospital. And like I said with the knife and the remote control story, I had a problem with, seeing blood and passing out in high school. It was like a combination of the goriness and the heat and, my own imagination running away on me to a point where I couldn't take it and I would just pass out. So, we all go back to our desks, which are basically wooden tables that are built out of the floor with these stools. So I'm sitting on this stool, and I'm basically leaning forward with my elbows on my knees, trying to get my head down between my knees. I'm just breathing, trying to keep my head low so the blood can get to my brain. I'm just taking deep breaths, trying not to pass out. And of course, the teacher from the other class comes in and is like, "Hey, are you all right? You're not gonna pass out, are you?" And I look up at him and I'm like, "No, I'm fine. I'm not the one who just hacked his fucking thumb off with this table saw." And later we found out that this kid had basically, the reason he had sliced his thumb off with the table saw is because he was a fucking moron who was trying to pick out little pieces of wood from the still moving blade of the table saw without turning the fucking thing off first. So yeah, he was an idiot and got what he deserved. So yeah, that was my biggest phobia, was having dumb shit like that happen to me. Under gun, would you ever play Call of Duty? I think if someone put a gun to my head, I would do almost anything, and if all they wanted me to do was play a video game, yeah, sure. I will play Call of Duty if someone puts a gun to my head. Other than that, I don't really feel particularly inclined to. It is a first-person shooter. I'm not big on first-person shooters, but yeah, if I got a gun to my head, I'll play pretty much anything. What is the most ridiculous thing that ever happened while you worked at McDonald's? Most ridiculous thing that ever happened while I worked at McDonald's. Well, there was one time when I was cleaning out the fry vats and I started a fire because I forgot to turn the damn thing off. And in my panicked reaction to seeing this fire billowing up from this empty grease vat, I went to the manager who was in the drive-thru window, urgently trying to get him to, "Hey, I need your help right now," being as urgent as I possibly can, and he's just like, "No, I'm busy here. I can't help. I can't leave. I'm busy here with the drive-thru." And he just wasn't fucking getting how urgently I fucking needed his help. But then I went back to the chicken vat station and realized, oh, I left the stupid thing on while I was emptying it. Duh. So I turned it off. I start spraying the fucking grease through to put the flames out, and everything was fine. So that was pretty ridiculous there, that the manager completely fucking ignored me, not realizing just how urgent the fucking situation was. I mean, if it was a seriously out of control fire that could have burned the fucking place down, what the fuck was I gonna do? Grab him, put him in a fucking headlock and drag him to the fucking fire and say, "Hey, I need your fucking help now, asshole." But actually no, that wasn't the most ridiculous thing that happened. The most ridiculous fucking thing that happened was one time I had just come on shift, and for those of you who don't know, when you work at a restaurant, you gotta wash your hands as soon as your shift starts. So I wash my hands, flick them dry, I go get some paper towel to dry my hands off of, and apparently the manager, like the head honcho manager, who's a fucking cunt, decides that I'm taking too much paper towel. So she's like, whoa, 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 hang on there. And she takes the paper towel out of my dripping wet hands. She basically rips it not even in half, like less than half of what I took, and then hands me this dinky-ass little portion of wallpaper And I'm like, I can't dry my hands with this. It's too small. I'm taking this already soaking wet piece of paper towel and rubbing my hands with it. They're not getting any drier. And she decides that, you know, you don't need to use that much paper towel. Here, I'll just pin this up here on the bulletin board with your name on it, and you can use it later. So there's this fucking this folded up piece of paper towel stuck to the bulletin board with my fucking name on it right next to the goddamn sink for everyone and their dog to fucking see. Well, I got pretty fucking pissed at that, and it basically led to us having a conversation in this phone booth-sized office, which was right next to the goddamn wash sink, arguing that I'm fucking barking at her, telling her, you know, what kind of bullshit is this? You gotta publicly humiliate me by putting up... It's not bad enough that you won't let me use the paper towel I need to get my hands dry. You gotta fucking put my goddamn name up there on this piece of paper towel as some form of public humiliation for everyone to see? What the fuck is wrong with you? So yeah, that right there was definitely the most ridiculous fucking thing that ever happened to me while I was at McDonald's. That bitch was a fucking cunt like you wouldn't fucking believe. What is the most ridiculous thing that ever happened at your recent job? I got fired for no fucking reason, that's what! I mean, the fucking manager didn't even have the goddamn nerve to tell me herself that I was fired. She had the owner's son come in and work that night, and he basically just said, hand in your keys, you're done. She's had enough. Had enough of what? I mean, I did everything I was told at that job. I put up with her idiotic shit more than I could fucking remember. It was ridiculous. And she doesn't even have the nerve to fire me in person. And without even a good fucking reason, either. I mean, the reason I got fired from my job is because she was trying to shave hours off my fucking paycheck, off the schedule. She was scratching out, like, the 15 minutes, the quarter of an hour that I was writing on the schedule that it took me to close the place up after it was closed. She didn't want to pay me for that time. So I left a note saying, hey, we've discussed this before. I expect to be paid for the time that I work. And she apparently decided she didn't want to put up with employees that she couldn't take advantage of anymore, and she decided to just cut me loose. And I put up a big fucking stink about it. I mean, I assumed naively that an employer had to have a damn good reason to let an employee go. But apparently, as long as they pay you 2 weeks severance, they can drop you for no reason at all. Just so long as they pay you 2 weeks severance pay. So I basically was left without a fucking leg to stand on, and I've been out of work since before Halloween. So yeah, that right there was the most ridiculous fucking thing that ever happened at that job. What do you think most games nowadays need more of? Quality assurance? Game testers? Fun? Creativity? We've basically hit the ceiling as far as graphics can go. But as far as I'm concerned, making a game look more realistic is not a good thing. I mean, I didn't like the graphics in Final Fantasy VIII because they were more realistic. I like Final Fantasy VII better because it had a more cartoonish look to it. It had a more eclectic group of characters. I mean, you had a fucking lion, a remote-controlled doll that was riding another remote-controlled doll. I mean, it wasn't just like 6 fucking white kids walking around. It was fucking... Final Fantasy VIII just sucked, man. I mean, there was literally no diversity in that game. It was just a bunch of fucking white kids running around doing shit. Yeah, they had their own weapon, but god damn, there was zero fucking diversity in that thing. Final Fantasy IX, holy shit, that was beautiful. Everything had a nice stylized look to it. They almost looked like chibi characters. And they had an eclectic group, too. I mean, that guy with the fucking dreadlocks and the red hair, holy shit, that guy looked awesome. But yeah, I like the more animated look to things like that. Wait a minute, what the fuck was the question here? What do you think most games nowadays need more of? Yeah, fun. you know, realistic-looking games like Final Fantasy 8 and 10 don't really do it for me. Or even Twilight Princess. I mean, I like Wind Waker on the whole better than Twilight Princess because Wind Waker had a more fun style to it. It looked like fun. Final Fantasy... Twilight Princess looked too real. And it didn't really... I mean, just look at the way that Link moves in that game. He looks like he's got his elbows right at his side and his hands are moving up and down. I mean, he looks so stiff. And of course, rock nipples didn't exactly help their cause. But anyway, yeah, I like more cartoony looking games. And just because we have the ability to make, you know, 3D games and stuff like that doesn't mean we should abandon 2D platformers. That's what I like about Steam games. It's like, you have brand new games that are 2D platformers, and they look fucking awesome. I mean, you can take these old-style games and take them to a completely new level beyond anything that could have been accomplished on the NES or even the Super NES. So yeah, don't abandon old genres of gameplay for realistic graphics and blah 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 blah.